hey, guess what? Miss Marvel's not dead anymore. Or she won't be dead, very, very soon.
Okay.
Marvel let that cat out of the bag a little early.
Wonder
And
why.
it was kind of the thing, I know, like, right, like, why would they spoil their own series? But so they let it out of the bag a little early that Kamala is going to have her another series, and she is in fact a mutant. That thing we talked about for forever, kind of the logical place for this to go, because in the Hellfire Gala, which you can check out an exclusive preview on comicbook.com of some of those pages, we see, hey, she wakes up, she's in an egg, she's now a mutant. And the cool part is that because I like this destination for the character. That was never our issue with this whole premise. It was just the execution was terrible. But this endpoint is cool. I'm also, I love her being a mutant. It also stacks on top of her inhuman ability, so they're not taking that part away. It's just an additive thing. Cool. Awesome. She's going to get a new series. She's going to be an X-Men. Awesome. So love all that. So that all truly kicks off in the Hellfire Gala. But that is also kind of a huge thing of the fall of X and the beginning of that chapter and all that. So lots and lots of stuff there. So I'm excited that she's back. I think Marvel has a habit of doing these dumb deaths right when a movie launches. Death of Doctor Strange, death of Scarlet Witch, or like all these dumb things. I don't know what it is about them. And they go, hey, a movie's coming out. Let's kill the character. It's just stupid. And it rarely works out. So stop doing that. For the love of Lord, please. All right. Anyway, I gotta get all ranty. Let's move into something fun. So, Blade #1 is the first book of this week's books. This is a brand new series, a perfect jumping on point, and I can actually look. I can start with Hawkgirl. I have no problem starting with Hawkgirl, but we'll start with Blade. This was I think actually a really good issue, a really good starter issue of kind of it recaps throughout the story exactly what you need to know about Blade, really who Blade is. I think one of the cool things about this book is actually that we typically see Blade just like annihilate a bunch of vampires or werewolves, things like that. You get that here, absolutely. But I also like that you actually get like a more of like a one-on-one showdown, and you actually get someone who like really stacks up against Blade just from a technical and power level type thing. That's something you actually don't get all the time in Blade appearances, so that's cool. And it's fittingly brutal too. Like it's not, like supremely over the top, but there are some sequences in here that like, hey, I'm reading a Blade book. Like it actually does feel visceral. It does feel like, oh man, people are getting impaled and corpses are being hung from walls. Like there's a lot of that stuff. And it ends in an interesting place. So, I mean, I didn't have a ton of expectations coming into Blade, but I'm like, hey, I'm going to stick with it. So that's how I felt. Who knows if we'll ever get the Blade movie. So for now, this is your best Blade bet. What did everybody else think of this?
I think like we always talk about first issues being a big deal when we do these comic things. And I love this one as a issue because it was blessedly simple, blessedly straightforward, but still kind of started to hint at a deeper kind of character arc and like what's going to make this distinct and different, which is exploring, almost Blade's feeling towards vampires and stuff, almost not as, this is getting so messy, but like as a kind of prejudice that can be kind of manipulated and used. And there's a whole interesting thing in this book about like, I knew I could use you just because all you needed was something to hate and, point you at it. And you live up to your name. You're just a blade to cut things down. And it's just like, there's a nice little twist in this first issue where you think something's happening, then Blade does his thing, but then you find out that was very much the wrong thing to do. And it sets up a quest. It sets up an easy quest to follow. Like, we got to go get this MacGuffin to stop this thing and why Blade needs to do this. But also, like I said, deeper character evolution of forcing this guy to look at, like, how do I look at things? How do I approach things? What am I doing here? And like, is there some possible way I need to be kind of evolving? And it looked gorgeous. So
yeah, man.
And vampire action scenes, as people pointed out, was like, there's probably one of my favorite sequences in here since the actual Blood Rave in the Blade movie, which is
Elena Casagrande just knocked that out of the park.
Yeah. And just him doing a fight and like me looking at the art and being like, oh man, I would have to stay in and he does like fighting with these ultraviolet headlights and staying in the headlights to battle these vampires and just cool stuff. So it had all the basics you love about Blade, and like I said, a blessedly simple story that offers some adventure around the Marvel universe plus some character complexity. So I was good with this.
Yeah. Janelle, Connor?
Yeah, I thought this was super straightforward, like Kofi said, really easy to understand. I was excited by the twist. I was very happy about like what was going on with our, I guess, villain now, and intrigued about what's going to happen next. I don't know Blade other than the movies, the old school movies. So I feel like I'm getting a better sense of Blade with these comics, and that always makes me feel really excited. So when they just kind of show a little bit more about our lead character's personality, that makes me really happy. And I feel like I get that in this one for sure.
Yeah, and there is some synergy here. Like Brian Hill very much draws from the films.
Yeah.
Like you do.
Yes.
It was mentioned in the comments. Like you do get that feel. And
absolutely.
Connor, what'd you think?
I unfortunately did not read this week. I love me some Daywalker, but Matt, let me ask you this: did he say a line about some mofo's always trying to ice skate uphill?
No, he did not.
Then what are we even doing here?
That did not.
Oh, this Blade, yeah, this Blade isn't funny. He ain't doing quips.
Yeah,
he's
he's
chopping
more
eggs.
of a like. There's actually a suaveness to like the design, like the character design and stuff. But he's lethal, and I love that.
This is more for like the Midnight Boys because it's getting really black as hell. But the one thing I kept thinking in this book was like, shout out to the artists who are taking the time to do the complexities of black haircuts, because his lines in this are perfect. Like Blade's sidelines in this are perfect all throughout the thing. And that's a big deal. Listen, inclusion's a big deal. This is part of it. Like taking some time to not just color in some black dude's hair with just black marker and blues and stuff like that, and actually putting in lines and cuts as an actual guy would get his hair cut. Somebody as stylistic as Blade, and even that Wesley Snipes style cut into it. You got to draw that. And so shout out to the artists who are doing that, because people like me noticed. I was like, damn, Blade's lines are sharp, baby. All right.
Yeah,
so
that stuff matters, man. That stuff matters. No, absolutely.
He does.
And then moving into Hawkgirl, and actually it's funny that you mentioned that, because there are things in Hawkgirl, like we talk about characters. I've always been a Hawkgirl fan, specifically Kendra. So obviously, I was always going to at least give this a shot. But it's a character that I've grown to love, maybe despite the fact that we don't always know as much about her. Like the spotlights on her actually as a character, other than just the kind of brawling, flight side of the Justice League, have been limited. There's not as many to pick from, but some of those have been great. So I've grown a love for the character, and so it's awesome here that we actually get a lot of that. A lot of that gets pulled back. The series is really exploring who she is. They're obviously putting in her a new environment. She's in Metropolis. The Justice League is disbanded, so she's really there solo. Kind of for the first time, one of the running themes I love is that like I could watch Power Girl and Hawkgirl like have conversations just like forever, because there's some great stuff between them. But she mentions like she's always been part of a team, and then she runs down all the teams she's been a part of. She's like, okay. So like we're actually getting to see her operate solo. And yes, there's other characters that mix in. There's a great spot with her and Batman, but we're really just like getting a sense of who she is, the loss she's had, some of the things she's had to deal with Hawkman, which obviously we know that whole legacy and everything is crazy twisted up. And so I just really enjoyed getting to know her more as a character, and I hope that continues. I love swinging a mace and stuff. That's great. That's awesome. But like, I just really enjoyed getting to see that. And it was also nice to see like, hey, like, she's talking about her abuela here. Like there's actually some moments where we go, oh, wow. We actually get to learn about her culture and her as a person and things. So I dug that. I was really a fan of that. And there was a big enough hook here with her wings and the metal and how that relates to things that I'm intrigued. So I was digging it, but I know we haven't covered a lot of Hawkgirl here on this show. So what did everybody think of this?
I'm simple. I think this was the opposite of Blade for me. It was a little too dense and kind of convoluted and not clear in where it was going. I think there's a lot of weird stylistic things going on in this book. Like part of it wants to be very Tom King-ish with the kind of overarching narration. And I was like, okay, this is interesting for the first couple pages. But then it just turned into more feeling like a Dan Jurgens like throwback classic, kind of the heroes fighting villains and all that stuff, with more of a new age kind of like neo-feminist angle, with more of like Kendra just living her life, figuring herself out as a woman, going through these various scenes where she like catches up with an old person she knew in Metropolis, was going through these life changes, or sitting around her apartment and like doing stuff, talking about her abuela. And so there's a lot going on in this book, and it just felt like it was a little overstuffed for me. And I think it, more than anything, made me realize that DC tends to have a problem with these kind of adding female versions to these characters. Like every character doesn't have consistency, right? They're all like this hodgepodge of different changing things that eventually become messy. Supergirl, Batgirl, Hawkgirl, like all three of them, like all of their continuities, their characterizations, everything about them and how they're handled has changed so much through the eras that it is kind of, I think the one thing that I can think can come out of this is crafting a version of Kendra over these 6 issues that can become definitive and stable for some time. And I hope they do that, because Hawkgirl deserves that. Because I think, I mean, it's weird that like the Justice League cartoon has been best at it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you probably on everything but Batgirl. Because I think they over time, like there is a very much a
they brought Barbara back,
place,
but like,
you know what I'm saying? But like there's
there's
an idea of who Barbara is, kind of regardless of like how everything else changes around her. But I agree with you on like, yeah, like Supergirl, Power Girl in this very issue. Like Power Girl has had a crazy history of that, like not ever really finding kind of a tone that like, yeah, 100% that's it, and we all kind of need to stay consistent in some ways. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. Connor, Janelle?
I don't trust Hawkgirl ever since the animated series, so I did not read this book.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing. I kind of, as soon as I opened it up, I was like, oh no, it's a wordy one. I could just tell at the front, the first page. I was like, oh no, this is going to be but it wasn't long. It was just quite dense. Like Kofi said, it's not terrible by any means. I mean, the artwork's beautiful. It's poppy. It's colorful. It's well drawn. Every character looks fantastic. I'm picking up what they're putting down. I am very intrigued about Galaxy Girl.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Galaxy.
Yep.
I'm so excited about Galaxy. To me, Galaxy is everything. Like that's the whole reason why I'd want to keep reading. I love the power set. I love her relationship. I love the corgi. Like I'm eating that up. But I do think that Hawkgirl was outshined by Galaxy in her own book. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I understand. Okay. Moving into pull list Rex real quick. Just knocking off a couple. Something is Killing the Children, number 31 is like Erica Slaughters really has a nemesis now. And in this book, like they've been building that for a while and she's been around, but like here Cutter becomes like this just true nemesis to her. And it's just a brutal issue. There's so much, like this series is so good. You should definitely be reading this. Radiant Black, number 25. We're about to start a huge catalyst war with everything in the Massiverse. And so this is really kind of the start to that. It's been building, but this is really where that launches. So you should definitely check that out and all the other Massiverse books as well. And then finally, Moon Knight, City of the Dead, number 1. This is a series that is going to introduce Layla as well, kind of into the comics universe and, you know, kind of do that mirroring thing of the MCU, but it's just as a standalone thing. Like Jed McKay's been killing the main Moon Knight run, but this is excellent and actually a really interesting and different enough companion piece that like there's enough connecting tethers, but it's not a bunch of bleed over, so like you won't be overloaded. Definitely recommend this. So yeah, that's comics this week.